everyone. Very happy to be live with Samantha Lee Howe. So excited that we've got you back at last.
Hooray! I'm glad to be here.
Start us off with an intro to you and your books.
Well, yes, as Kaz said, I'm Samantha Lee Howe. I've been writing professionally since about 2006, 2007. And I write thrillers now, and I also write horror, fantasy, and science fiction. So I'm quite across the board spectrum, really.
Yeah, we're going to have to dip into that because I like across the broad spectrum sort of things. Sci-fi and horror.
Yeah, I've got a vampire series. I've got a trilogy that's sort of a science fiction fantasy trilogy. The vampire series is actually, I'm in the middle of writing book 7 on that one. I haven't written one of those for quite a few years, but it's you know it's a fun series. I kind of think of it as Queen of the Damned meets Quantum Leap with a dash of Hellraiser, because there's sort of like time travel, there's myth and magic, there's obviously vampires, but they're vampires with a difference. And I've also got my fun sort of Cat Lightfoot Mysteries, which is the first book in that is Zombies at Tiffany's. And each book is also riffing on something literary. So we've got Cat on a Hot Tin Airship and What's Dead Pussycat and those sorts of fun titles. But they're all written under the name Sam Stone, which is what I used to write most of my horror under.
Nice. And then, so under your crime name, you've got some thrillers as well?
I have. I've got The Stranger in Our Bed, which was made into a movie, which I think we talked about last time we had our discussion, didn't we, Kath? And then, of course, there's the House of Killers trilogy, which is currently it's on a shopping option. So hopefully that will get made into a TV series with any luck. I've already written the pilot, so fingers crossed.
And then the short stories that are out now?
Yeah, the short stories are Crimes of Passion, and I just had an urge to write some more short stories. I had a few already in the crime, sort of genre. And I thought, well, I've got a few that I'd like to collect into a book, but I didn't have enough. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to set myself a task of writing another 10 or so stories. So I was kind of writing one a week until I wrote the whole collection, which is always a nice challenge because you're having to come up with a completely original idea once a week. So it's quite stretching. I was quite exhausted when I finished actually, but very pleased with it.
They've got like a really cool cover as well.
Yeah, the tattoo arm, the tattoo. I love the cover actually. I think it just sort of says something. I don't know what was it you like about it? I'd like to hear from your point of view what you like it.
It's like just quite unique, isn't it? It stands out over like other things.
It's different, isn't it? It doesn't look just like a normal crime book. And I think that the collection myself, it's got sort of like lots of elements of horror in there as well. So, because I always think crime and horror do mix anyway. I know you've read it recently, so it'd be nice to hear what you think.
I read it yesterday. In one go.
Wow, amazing. And what was there a standout story for you?
Do you know what? I really like the Sherlock Holmes ones.
Yeah, they're cool, aren't they? I really enjoyed doing those, and in fact, I haven't had an opportunity to do any more Holmes. And I was asked back in the day; those were originally published as Sam Stone, and they were one of them was for Titan, and one of them was for Constable and Robinson. And editors George Mann was the Titan one, and it was Simon Clarke, horror writer who's mostly known for Simon Clarke, who did the other one, which was Mammoth Book of Sherlock Holmes Abroad. And it was a nice challenge because I'd never done that before. And I love Holmes. But I thought, well, can I do this? Can I write, a story that is Holmesian? And I'm glad you like them because that means, for you, they worked.
I think I particularly like the one abroad as well.
It's one in China. Quite exotic, isn't it, that one?
It's quite clever.
Oh, do you like it? Oh, good. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I've had very little feedback on those in the past, so that's lovely to hear. I really enjoyed doing that one. That was the very first one that I wrote. And Simon even said to me, the editor, when he got it, he said it was definitely the most exotic one out of the whole collection that he got, and he loved it. And I was so happy to have made it into that collection. It's great. It's great fun.
Are you in any other like collections? You were just saying about going to a JG Ballard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, JG Ballard. I mean, it's called Reports from the Deep End, edited by former chair of the CWA, Maxim Jakubowski, who I think you probably know. And Maxim is a wonderful, very, very established editor. And I've done a couple of books for him. I did this JG Ballard one, which is out. Actually, I think it's technically published on Saturday. And we're doing a launch at Forbidden Planet in London. Not Saturday, next Saturday, that is, not tomorrow, the 11th. And it was a challenge again. It was another challenge writing into not so much a style, but an homage story that makes you think of J.G. Ballard's work. So that was also great fun. And I also did a Connell Woolrich one for Maxim as well, which was done last year. And that one, to me, I loved, because Woolrich to me is just ultimately femme fatales, and noir is always what I think of for Woolrich. And so I really enjoyed writing the story that I did for them. And it's actually, I haven't used it in the collection. I haven't put it in my collection because I just felt it was too new in that collection. It didn't seem fair to use it. But I really enjoyed writing that story. I thought it was great fun. It really was.
It must be quite hard getting into the style of writing like a J.G. Ballard book, because he's got a very distinct style, hasn't he? You read his
Definitely.
Very...
Yeah. Have you read a lot of Ballard? I mean, he's very eclectic.
A lot. I've read dipped in and out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sort of what I'd done as well. I read a bit more, obviously, when I was asked to do it. And one of the things that I really wanted to sort of bring forward with the story that I was doing was how sort of bleak some of the endings are of his stories. They're really, really quite bleak, aren't they? And it'd be ordinary people in extraordinary situations, but sort of coping with these weird situations. And then there's always like this sort of bleak ending, which I'm quite good at writing, because I spent a lot of time writing a lot of Lovecraftian and Cthulhu stories, and they're always bleak. They're always really dark, and I like all that. I enjoy doing that.
They really are. I've read a lot less Lovecraft, I'm going to be honest. Not my thing, really.
Well, it's a thing, isn't it? It's a genre again. The tentacle monsters, or the cosmic horror in itself, is a genre that does appeal to a lot of people, but you can't love everything. I don't love everything. There's certain things that I just wouldn't read at all.
I find horror a really tricky genre, and I think it is for a lot of people. I can't watch horror films at all. They scare me too easily.
And you can't really put your head behind a pillow when you're reading a book either, can you? It's even worse.
I can read horror books. I do like some horror books, and there's like certain horror authors who are like on my must-buy list, if you know what I mean. Like, if I've got a book out, I'm going to read it.
Who do you like? Who's your favourite?
Either Joe Hill or Grady Hendrix.
Oh, Joe Hill's just amazing. I've not read Grady, but Joe, yeah, I love Joe. I first introduction to him was Heart-Shaped Box, which I thought was incredibly clever and very, very different, from anything I'd read before. But then he's got good genes, hasn't he? So being Stephen King's son.
I've got a signed copy of Heart-Shaped Box.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. That is amazing. I was a huge King fan back in the day. Haven't read anything recently, but then I think I've just been spending a lot of my time reading a lot more crime, a lot more thriller sort of stuff in the last few years, because that's what I wanted to write. So you do it as your research, really, read a lot of it.
So how have you got involved? You were saying you're going down to a Doctor Who event.
Oh yeah, tomorrow I'm going to, it's called Time Controller. It's in London. And my husband owns Telos Publishing with his partner, Stephen Walker. And they're actually launching a book there tomorrow, written by Andrew Morgan, and it's called And Action. And it's his life as a director of, many, many different TV series, Doctor Who being one of them. And it's quite a fascinating book. So we're kind of launching that tomorrow. But my husband's also quite involved in Doctor Who because he publishes a lot of books about the series, but also he's written himself over 30 sort of, non-fiction books on the subject as well. So he's quite well versed and we're quite involved. Do you like Doctor Who?
No.
Isn't that funny?
Really but I have bet, because my husband goes to lots of Comic Cons with his business, and I have met like Doctor Who actors, and like I've met an original Cyberman and various other things, but yeah, no, it's not for me.
No, not for you. I mean, it's not for everybody, is it? I mean, I think it's what you grow up with as well. I mean, I grew up. Tom Baker was definitely the Doctor that I remembered the most, and I obviously seen a lot more of them since I've been with David, being uber Doctor Who historian and fan that he is. I know a lot more about it than I used to.
Yeah, these things grow on you, don't they? If you marry a nerd, you sort of learn you learn all the things.
You do, and it always amazes him when I go, "Oh, is that monster such and such a thing?" And he'll go, "Who are you and what have you done with the real Sam?" Because you just absorb it. You just can't help it. You do absorb it.
You do,
But I do like it. Yeah, you do. It rubs off.
I wondered if you'd written for it as well, because you've got such a varied kind of back catalogue. It feels like something Doctor Who really.
I have done a Doctor Who spin-off drama, which was based on the John Pertwee era, The Demons. And we did this 6-part drama for screen, which is called The Demons of Devil's End. Well, it's actually The Witch of Devil's End, it was originally called, and then it was boxed into a box set called The Demons of Devil's End. And I was the script editor on it, and I wrote one of the stories. And it was one of the original actors, Damaris Heyman, who reprised her role in it. And that was filmed by Real Time Pictures. So, yes, it was my first dip into screenwriting, actually, my first official. And it was great fun to do. So, yeah, I have written in the Who universe. Yes, definitely.
You'd be surprised. There's quite a few crime writers that have, actually. It's one of those things that seems to pull in crime writers, isn't it? Doctor Who, and there's like various graphic novel series that do as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a huge, even now, a huge franchise. And of course, Disney's just involved in it now. I don't know 100% what that's all about, but I think they're now, quite involved in Doctor Who. I think they I don't know whether they own it now or what, but it's certainly getting bigger and bigger all the time. And we've got a new Doctor coming out soon. I think they brought David Tennant back recently, and then there'll be Ncuti Gatwa, who's going to be taking over as the next incarnation of Doctor, who actually I'm really looking forward to seeing, because he's such a talented young actor. I think he'll be great. I think he'll bring something really different to it, which is what you hope for. So I might actually be watching it again, soon. Who knows?
Let's, because we're meant to be here talking about crime, aren't we?
We are actually. We've digressed.
Yeah, digressed well off, haven't we?
Yes.
Talk to us. So, what's it like going from writing kind of full novels to short stories? What are
the challenges of that? Yeah, I mean, it is. I always think of myself more as a novelist, but I have now got about four collections out, and I am frequently asked to do stories. So I've improved the art of it. I think it's much harder to write stories than it is to write novels, because in a way you've got a lot longer space to grow things and grow a story. The thing with the story art, the art of a story is keeping it tight, but you've still got exactly the same amount of, story quality in that short space of, a short word count that you would have in a whole novel sometimes. And I think I think it is challenging. It can take me, I can write 5,000 words in a day of a novel, but a 5,000 word short story could take you 10 days to write, because you just have to keep it so reined in, and it is a lot harder. It's a far harder, media, form than it is writing novels, for me anyway, personally.
It must be they're quite divisive amongst readers as well, short stories, aren't they? Some people really love them, and then others, like, it'll put them off. Like,
Isn't it
I
funny
know
that
people who won't read short stories at all.
how weird? I do find that odd, and definitely short story collections don't sell as well as novels. Um, but I always think, for me as well, because I'm a busy person, I love short story collections because I can just get a quick fiction hit from something, put it down, and not worry about that book again for a few weeks if I don't have the time to pick it up again. Whereas if I start to read a novel, I want to read it all to the end, but then sometimes get pulled away because I'm too busy to carry on, and that frustrates me. I've got so many unfinished books that I've been trying to read for that reason, and I think that's, for me, somebody like me, is perfect. Short stories are a great fix, and the art of them can be, if they're really good stories, they can be so thrilling to read, and they leave something with you. Do
They
you like stories? You do like short
love
stories?
them. I love anthologies of them because I think they're a bit like a festival ticket, an anthology, aren't they? You buy them for the
Yeah,
authors you like and then discover several new ones that you didn't know
absolutely.
beforehand. I love them by authors that I like. Um, Going back to Joe Hill, I think my introduction to him was 20th Century Ghosts.
Oh, wow. I haven't read that. No, I haven't
And
read
it's
that
just
one.
like that's a collection of his like short stories, and there are still some of them that like to this day kind of I can think about and I'm scared by.
That's great, isn't it? I love that. I think any story, any book should, it should leave something with you, shouldn't it, in the end? You should always take something away with you, from whatever you read, and then you feel like you've really enjoyed it. Even if it's left you with a haunted feeling, or, it's scary, it's still left you with that. It's affected you. That's what fiction should do. It's amazing.
Donna's asked if you've ever written a short story and thought it could be a novel. Is there anything you've left unfinished or wanted to go back and make longer?
There is a story in my very first short story collection called Zombies in New York and Other Bloody Jottings, and the story in that is called Chillers and Breathers. And it's one of those stories that Stephen Walker, who was editor on it with me when I wrote the collection, said that he could see it as a book right away, and he said, "Oh, I really wish you'd do that as a book." And it's been one of those things that I thought about it over and over again, quite frequently, and then I'm always too busy doing something else, that I haven't ended up going back to that. But I think one day I'm hoping to, because I do think it would be an epic book. It would be very sort of urban fantasy for sure. Also a bit comedic, a bit sort of like it's got humor in it, and it's basically, the story itself is about how there's a dimension crash, and you have the dead and the living are now walking in the same universe, so they can see each other, and they have to learn to live together, and they don't like each other very much. So that's where the premise of that. And one of my characters is a dead detective working with a live detective, and we obviously call live people breathers, and people who are dead are chillers, because you always feel cold when you're near them. So that's where it all came from. It's a fun story. I think thinking about it again, I really do have the urge to write that up as a novel now. With a lot more obviously in it.
Hopefully we've inspired you and you'll go back.
Yeah, you might have done, I think.
I love it. Urban fantasy, one of my favourite genres.
And it's still detective as well, so it's still in that thriller sort of like crime sort of area as well for me. It was one of those early dips into it that I was doing. So there's quite a few crime stories in that collection. There's like a vampire who solves, like the Jack the Ripper, she finds out who Jack the Ripper is, and things like that. So, and that one actually won the British Fantasy Award for Best Story. That was called Fool's Gold. So that was quite a nice story, that one, to write as well. And that was more science fictiony in the end, but a Ripper City, Ripper story.
What made you go into the crime then?
Basically what happened was I was writing horror. I got to a point where I felt like I'd said all I wanted to say for a while. And I didn't want to write anymore. And then a friend of mine told me a true story, which was what The Stranger in Our Bed ended up being, based on. And I thought, I just got goosebumps listening to her tell me this story. And I thought, well, I'm going to take that and I'm going to twist that and I'm going to make it something else. And before that, though, I'd already written a supernatural thriller called Posing for Picasso, which is, again, it's a modern day crime with a detective story in New York, but it has a supernatural element to it. So I was already crossing the genres, and I thought, can I actually do a straightforward psychological, which I love psychological thrillers as well, love reading them. Or, can I do a straightforward without having a supernatural element? It was kind of a challenge to myself to do it. And because I've never written sort of like straightforward fiction that wasn't either horror or supernatural or vampires or something. And I really did enjoy writing the book. I was absolutely, in love with it when I wrote it. And I was really, really proud of it. And, then my agent sold it and there I was suddenly in a different genre. I think that has happened to quite a lot of other writers, actually, that they switch. Either that's where the work is, or you just have that one breakaway novel that does it.
Yeah. So was your first crime like The Stranger in Our Bed?
It was my first straightforward one, yes. And then, of course, I went into slightly different genre with House of Killers because that was a spy espionage, and it's still thriller, but again, different genre again. So I always do this. I do bob around.
There's a lot of people who really like a spy kind of thriller, though, isn't there?
I love them myself. I mean, I would say I watch more of them than I read of them. But yeah, who doesn't love, Jason Bourne or Mission Impossible or, some of these amazing thrillers that I love watching, like Now You See Me, which in itself was kind of a thriller as well, with the magic side of it, which was great. I just love I love watching things that you've got a mystery to solve. I love that.
Someone's asked you how you choose your character names because you've got so much out there.
Oh yeah. Well, sometimes you do find yourself repeating names and you stop yourself and you go, oh, I've used that before. I actually sometimes have competitions where people win it to become a character in the book. So I use real people's names sometimes with their permission. And but I don't know, it's just the character seems to, there's an age group associated to it. So certain age groups are, I might sometimes Google and say, what was a popular name at such a date of birth or, such a year. Sometimes I have done that. But often they just come to me. It's just the right name for the character. Once I did change a character's name when I'd finished the book, and that was Posing for Picasso. At the very end, I thought I didn't like the detective's name, and I changed his name completely all the way, all the way through it. I could change all because I decided it just didn't seem right for him. It didn't suit him. And that was while the book grew, he grew in my head and it became a different name. That's the only time I've ever changed the name though of a character. They've always got that name and that's it. So a good question. Never been asked that one before.
No, it is. And everyone's got their own way of naming people, haven't they? Like here people use like football players and
Oh yeah. I think I do. Sometimes it is coloured by you be watching something. I was watching Homeland once, and there was the main character that's called Carrie, I think, and I ended up using Carrie in the book that I was writing at that time, which was nothing like Homeland, I have to say, the book, but the name, I liked it, and I thought I'm going to use that. I'm going to use Carrie in that name. So that book's not in print yet, actually. So that's still to be sold, unfortunately. Oh, my fingers crossed.
Do you ever meet people and think, "Oh, I'm gonna use your name"? That's quite unusual.
I have done. I met this lady was doing my eyelashes for me a few years ago, and her little girl was called Nevaeh, which is actually heaven backwards. And so I was going to call Neva in House of Killers. She was going to be Nevaeh. And I changed it because after a discussion with my agent, she said, well, that's quite a challenging name to, when you look at it, how do you pronounce it kind of thing. So I ended up shortening it to Neva. But I did think Nevaeh was such a beautiful name. And especially with the fact that it is heaven backwards, I thought that I could use that. And so I have since seen a drama, I think it was a thriller, that where one of the characters was called Nevaeh. So I thought, oh, there you go. That name has been used somewhere else. I was quite impressed by that.
Interesting, because I think that can put people off, can't it? Like that's the thing that puts people off kind of books in translation sometimes.
Yeah, if it's a
If they
difficult
can't
name.
figure out
That's
how
right.
to say the names and things.
That's right. That's right. It absolutely can. I mean, I think it does me. It put me off Harry Potter, actually. Because when I was reading it, there was so many names in it that I was trying to read it to my daughter at the time when she was little. And I thought, well, she was old enough to read it herself because she'd read Wuthering Heights by then. She was 9. And I said to her, look, you can read it yourself if you like it so much. And I gave it to her and walked away. That was the last time I looked at Harry Potter. There were just too many names in it. Too weird names.
Too many weird names.
I was the wrong demographic, obviously.
Donna says that's why she hated War and Peace. The names were too difficult.
I see that. Oh,
I just think War and Peace is really boring.
yes. I'm not a big fan of Anna Karenina either. I had to do that at university and I hated it by the time I finished it.
I don't like Tolstoy at all, really, like book-wise. But I do really like Dostoevsky.
Yes.
Like really big fan of his work.
Which Dostoevsky is your favourite?
I either so I've dipped into his comedies, which are quite good, but
Yeah.
really had to go with it, The Idiot.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, I've not read that for years. Wow. Long time since I've looked at those, actually. I tend to read, it's all got to be quick fixes now. I'm not reading so much literary as I used to. I used to read a lot of literary fiction. Yeah, boring too, somebody else says. All I can see is Facebook user. I can't see your name, sorry.
But yeah, no, that's boring too. I went through a phase when I was younger of reading loads of classics because you could get the ones for £1.
Yes,
you could
that's
get
right.
load with your pocket money. You could get one book or you could get 5 books.
That's brilliant, isn't it? I remember that actually. I remember. Was it Penguin that did them? Penguin Classics, and they were £1.
Something like that. They were like £1, and I've read so many random classics because they used to be £1.
I'm a big fan of sort of 19th century Gothic for that reason. Sort of Sheridan Le Fanu and obviously Dracula, but that sort of again those classics that you could get because they were always out there so cheap. I used to read loads of those, loved them.
Is that what's brought you to writing your own vampire fiction and stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because I had a love of, Christopher Lee growing up Hammer films. I watched an awful lot of Hammer movies. I stayed up late watching double bills with my sister. And vampires were always fascinating to me. And I think obviously reading Stephen King's Salem's Lot was one of my favorites. But what really, really changed me, had a really massive impact on me, was Interview with the Vampire. Because that book, when I read it at the age I was I'd never read anything like it. I'd never thought of vampires in that way. Usually vampires were horrible creatures, and here they were portrayed in a somewhat romantic sort of situation, and that immortality itself was the grand prize at the end of it. And I think that's one of the things that's so fascinating about vampires, is that sort of staying young forever, the curse, of course, having to kill to live, or to at least take blood. And in some cases, And my vampires can go out in the day, but they aren't, don't burn up or anything like that if you go in a church or anything silly like that. But again, it's just that they can be anything. And I've always thought with vampires as well, that they're almost like the way we write them now, they're kind of an evolution of humanity rather than a devolution, which is what we think of as zombies, So they're very, very, there's something that's been made to be very attractive now. And I always liked reading vampire novels. I got every vampire book I could get my hands on and read them, I love them.
Yeah, I like some vampire novels, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a fan of Dracula. But
you read the book?
The
book is. I mean, I've read it many, many times, and the book it's got levels in it that I think aren't always obvious on the first read. There is an awful lot of Freudianism in there. I actually analysed it for one of my degrees. I did use it as to analyze it, and I put a Freudian twist on it. But I think it's fascinating what from that book, how much other fiction has been inspired by it. That's one of the fascinating things. And everyone knows who Dracula is, don't they? It's one of those that forever it'll just be, it's inspired so much fiction, so much TV. I'm not a big fan of some of the adaptations, but I really liked the Stephen Moffat Dracula miniseries he did recently. A couple of years ago now. But I loved that. I don't know. Did you see it? Do you ever watch any of those? No.
I don't really watch a lot of TV, to be honest.
You're good though, because you're working on nearly every night. You're interviewing somebody, aren't you? I know.
I'm reading books and interviewing people.
You're too busy for TV.
Occasionally doing the day job.
I love it. Oh,
that's it's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the things that you're interested in and have written as your Sam Stone kind of thing lead naturally into crime.
They do, yeah.
Like most vampire stories do have like an element of crime.
I think all stories that I've ever written have all got a mystery in there behind them. There's always something to solve. There's always a mystery. And I don't know why I've naturally done that. It's just the way I think, I suppose. Otherwise, I think the story might be boring. If there isn't, an actual point to where you're going, the direction. It's kind of a journey, no matter what, whether it's a physical one or a mental one, or or finding out the truth about something.
Why did you choose to write under a different name?
Well, I was previously married to somebody else, so that was actually sort of my name anyway. It was Goldstone, so I shortened it to Stone for the sake of the books. So it was sort of like natural to use it. But now, of course, I'm remarried and I'm using, that what is now my name, my thrillers. And I love my name, actually. I love it. So I'm really glad to be using it, because I'm very, I was very proud to get David's name at the end when I married him. So, being a hopeless romantic that I am as well.
I'm intrigued by, you said you've got one of your degrees was analysing.
Yeah, I think it was my first degree. We did a lot of Victorian. We were reading an awful lot of Victorian fiction for one of the, modules on it. And my second degree is it's actually an MA in creative writing, where I specialised in prose writing, which is then I wrote my first book, which was my first vampire book, for my master's degree dissertation, actually. So that's how that whole beautiful thing ended up being finished. I was teaching full time at the time, English and drama, and I was writing a chapter a week, because that was all I had time to do. It was amazing, really. I can't believe I did it now. I can't believe I'd be able to write a book and work full time else doing another job now. I just don't know how I did it. But you do have to at the time.
I'm always fascinated by other people's dissertations, because they always sound more exotic than anything you've ever written, don't they? When you hear other people going like, I analysed Dracula, or I did this, and you're like, yeah, that sounds really cool. Like
Is it because, yeah, because mine were humanities based. I suppose they can be a little bit more creative, where I suppose because you're science, you had to do something in fact, didn't you? So it perhaps isn't quite, you can be a little bit more creative when it's English or literature, or because you can put different slants on things, can't you? And you can start analysing things with certain things like Freudianism, or you know, that sort of looking for all the sexual innuendos in a book.
Mine was on public understanding of genetics.
Wow, that is amazing. You see, I think that is amazing, because I think you're really clever. Because, you know, and me, I'd be like, where do you even start? You know?
We just like stand in the centre of town with a questionnaire and ask people questions.
Oh wow. What sort of questions were you asking them?
I think I asked people mostly about all the different types of things that are very, common in genetics that people have opinions about, like genetic modified food and cloning and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Things that make really good sci-fi story.
they really do. I was just going to say, yeah, I've always been fascinated with the idea of cloning. I think it's, you know, I know it's not ethical, but oh, you know, sometimes the thought of it, you have that conversation of nature versus nurture. You often wonder what you would have been like if you'd been put in brought where different parents or and a different environment. And that was one of the things growing up, because I was in a terrible situation at home, that I used to think, oh, I wish I was lived somewhere else, or And then later, as I got older, I read the cloning of Joanna May, which was Faye Weldon, and that really sort of got those thoughts in my head even more, about I think cloning is fascinating. There's so many things you can do. You could think, so many stories could be written about that yet. I don't think there's been enough written about it, actually.
No, there's a lot of things that aren't, isn't there? But I guess your problem when you're delving into anything, and you have this as a crime author, is how far do you research? How far do you have to be accurate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again with thrillers, I think anything scientific, you can be accurate, but you've got to remember it's fiction. So I would go down the research route, and you can end up down some terrible rabbit holes, actually, which is very distracting and very, very good for procrastination. But I think what you've got to do is do the basic research, make sure that what you do say sounds authentic, but you'd not go into it so too deeply, because that isn't what the story would be about. Ultimately, the story would be about the mystery that you're solving, but that would be the backdrop, wouldn't it? Or if indeed cloning was something that was the answer to the mystery, that somebody had been cloned, it could be, you'd just be, you go more scientific, more science fiction-y that way. I think I'd be thinking more sci-fi and sort of with a thriller element, rather than a straightforward thriller with something like that. But yeah, I think you can get away with murder with that anyway. It's fiction. You should be able to write what you want.
I think it depends on what's in the fiction. I guess as a scientist, I like my science to be accurate.
And I would ask somebody like you, if I was doing something like that, I would definitely get, some consultation about it, and I have done lots of things, medical things, where you research and you think, am I talking absolute bull here? You write it down. Then I ask a doctor friend, does this read okay? And then they'll give you that big tick, or just if you change that word or whatever, that'll read better. And I did it with House of Killers. I actually spoke to a guy who works for, was recruited by the government at university, shall we say. And I can't tell you much more about him than that. But he gave me an awful lot of inside information about spying, about hacking, about how you could take over a plane with an iPad. Scary stuff that some of it I'm deliberately never going to remember again, because it was scary stuff, and it's stuff that that actually secretly does happen, that we as normal people never get to hear about, things that do happen. And so that sort of research, you can end up going massively down rabbit holes with that, because it's fascinating as well. But also you've got to, then when you come to the writing side of it, you've got to say, right, I'll use that, but it's it's part of it, it's not the story though. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Donna's asked you who the coolest contact is you have in your phone as a result of researching books.
Say that again. Who's the coolest? Who's the coolest person I've got in my contacts?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
As a result of researching books.
I'm trying to think actually. Probably there's this terrific guy called Tom who works for Accuracy International, and he told me all about how to use a sniper rifle and how wind affects it. And I think he's really cool. I think he's really cool because he taught me lots of really interesting stuff, you know. But other than that, research wise, and of course this other guy that I can't say his name, who gives me information, and I still would if I ping him anytime. But yeah, I think they are probably the two coolest people that I've spoken to, because it's been so related to, you know, weaponry and things that I didn't know anything about, because, you know, I've never shot a rifle. We were in the middle of COVID and I wanted to go down to the factory, but I couldn't, to actually look at the weapons. And he just helped me out so amazingly. And I just picked up so much from what our conversations, that, yeah, he's cool. I think so.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. My dad's quite a good shot. He used to be like in the army.
Oh, did he? Oh, wow, how amazing! So he's not in the army. He's retired now, I assume. Your dad.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I'm the youngest child. He's definitely retired.
I've actually got another friend as well, whose husband is a sniper, and when I was researching House of Killers, I casually mentioned, and they were all like looking around, really sheepish. And I'm going, what's the matter? And I didn't even know he was in the army. It was all kept so quiet. But we did used to live in Lincolnshire, and we're right in the middle of Spook Central. So we had Cranwell and Digby. And when we first moved in there, our mobile phones didn't work for a month. And then suddenly they started working again. It was spooky. And I mean, literally, they do check you out when you move into the area. So I've been told. So,
Oh, right. See, I was born in Lincolnshire because I had a dad in the army.
well, of course, he was probably at one of the bases, wasn't he?
Mm.
So I've got this friend who her husband's at one, and she said, "Well, he is," but I said, "Oh, well, would you be interested in talking to me?" She said, "I don't think he can. Don't think he's allowed to." So like, all right, then leave it at that. Leave it at that. Can't find out what he really does. I was very, very interested after that, though. I really wanted to know, but I just love fascinating jobs. Do you ever wonder, Kaz, that in another life you might well have gone down that route yourself?
No, definitely would never have gone down that route.
Did you not like the army, sort of being an army
There's,
child, as it were?
I wasn't. So my brother was. My parents left the army just after I was born, so I have a really cool birth
Ah,
certificate that says like where I was born, and that's about it. In fact, Sarah Blackburn said me too on here, and she was born in the exact same place as me, and is the only person I know
oh wow.
from the same place because it's so weird.
Small world. Small
Yeah,
world.
it's genuinely cool knowing someone like it. It kind of legitimizes where you were born, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Knowing one other person from there.
it really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is quite cool. But yeah, no, never, not a thing for me. I don't think.
Wow. I do wonder myself a few times. I think, you know, if I was a different person, you know, I'm fascinated with how people can be spies, for example. I think that is fascinating. I don't think I'd have the nerve, that you'd have to have a lot of nerve, wouldn't you, to do something like that? But you know, you have to be really, really sort of calm and in control of everything. And I think I'm probably too ditzy, really. And you know, I talk too much, so I'd give it all away.
But I would say you're a teacher, so you've probably got a lot of skills that would make you really good at something like that.
Possibly, yeah. You can do the poker face when you want. I mean, yeah, being a teacher is yeah. You need to. Crowd control for a start is one of the things, isn't it? That you end up needing to have good skills at. Yeah.
And a ridiculous amount of like decision-making abilities.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I must admit, you go through a lot of times in situations in school where you're actually thinking, I've got to make sure everyone's safe right now. You know, that there are situations like that for sure that I've been in. Yeah. Don't want to do it again. Just saying.
Sarah's saying she's a scaredy cat, so can't be a spy.
Oh. But you know, there are different kinds of spies. There's people that you know, obviously were behind the scenes, you know, so they were the technical spies, so hackers and, you know, all of that. So there's different kinds of spying, isn't there? Different kinds of talent. But yeah, being in the field, I think, has got to be the most hairy, though, of the lot, you know.
Yeah, the ones where you could get caught is probably the worst.
Exactly. Get
But
caught, killed, tortured. And, you know, it's happened, doesn't it? You
I
know.
think that's why people like that in fiction. So I guess that's why when you've gone into your like House of Killers and stuff, like that's why people are drawn to it, isn't it? Because it is something so.
Definitely. I think you're right. I think it things with thing with thrillers, and especially that kind of spy thriller where there is the risk element, and the same thing applies for horror, is that I think people actually really do enjoy being scared, but it's safe scared. You know, you're buying into that sort of fight or flight instinct that you've got, but without actually being in any danger because you're reading the fiction. And you can close the book and walk away from it and forget about it if you want to afterwards, which is great. Yeah, it's. I think that's what it is. I think that's the appeal. You know that, and also that how do other people live kind of thing. That's like voyeurism. That's what books and film are about, aren't they? We're watching other people's lives and seeing all their dramas. You know, like sort of pan out in front of us and enjoying it, enjoying seeing their drama. And thinking, thank God that's not me.
We've got everyone's spy abilities coming out now. So Sarah would do languages and translating. Donna would do hacking.
Brilliant. I think that would be brilliant. You see, they have people do that. That's the kind of job. You might never be in the field. You might never be, you know, like being trained to fight or, you know, or do any of those things, but you'd be doing crucial stuff that is tantamount. There are translators in the war, particularly, weren't there? They used to listen to I don't know whether it was radio shows or dispatches or whatever, and translate and do reports on it. So all of that's really crucial, important, I think, and a great skill.
I'd just be something like really menacing and do like poisons or something. With the alien
I'd, I'd be very good at making up stories, storylines.
People got the
Tell
whole
the spies.
backstories.
Yeah, the backstory. I'll give you the backstory. I think that's what I'd be doing.
I think look, everyone's got a job.
Oh,
So
I love that.
I do. There are some quite creepy stories in the collection as well, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Which one did stand out for you? I mean,
I'm thinking your very first one is definitely the first one in the. I'm trying not to give any spoilers away.
no, it's called Mine, and
Mm.
to summarize it, it's about a stalker. Yeah, it's dark. It's very, very. I think the thing is with this collection, I was kind of pushing my boundaries again, back to a little bit towards the horror route, but keeping it all straight. And there was no supernatural element in any of them. But I wanted to. One of the things I think is more scary than vampires or werewolves or ghosts or things like that is real people, what they're capable of. I think that people are terrifying. And I watch an awful lot of true crime stuff, and I study an awful lot of, I like the psychology of studying a serial killer, for example. And as a writer, enjoy writing in their head, if you know what I mean. Because it's almost like you're getting in there to see this is what I think they would think like, this is how I think they'd behave. Um, and so that was the first one that came to me actually to write for that one. And Yeah, I thought it was best done from his point of view. A bit like, it's hard to immediately dislike somebody when it's written in the first person, because you think there's always some redeeming quality, but no, he's not. He's not got any redeeming qualities.
But they wasn't the only one, and you're quite good at doing that. I think what really worked in all of them was you're quite good at leaving enough suggestion that your mind filled in the rest.
Yeah. What I always think, your reader will bring certain experiences to everything they read. It really isn't about what I intended either. It's about what you take from it, isn't it? Because everybody reads a story or a book and has a different reaction to it. And something that terrifies one person may not terrify another. And yeah, I think you're thinking of the wives, the last one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That one, I think, my husband said when he read it, he said that needs to be a film. He said you need to make a movie of that one, Sam.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah,
I think after the Sherlock Holmes one, that one was my favourite story.
yeah, the wives. David said he thought that was a standout one, and actually that's the one that closes the collection. That's the last one in it, and it's funny because I didn't really know what I was going to write with that one. I started writing it. I just had a premise that about this wives club, and
oh, you froze a
they're
bit.
very. Yeah, did we freeze then? Did we freeze?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to give anything away with that, but yes, that one I knew what I wanted to write with it, but I wasn't sure where I was going to take it until the very end, and it kind of wrote itself a bit, that one. And there's every story in there is different, as I'm sure you know yourself. I was trying to cover off different aspects of crime as well. And so you've got serial killers, you've got revenge in there, you've got sort of like vigilante stuff, things. So I was trying to get a bit of everything, all of which are crimes of passion in some way or another, or caused because of passion, or either love or revenge or hate, or just generally psychotic, which I always like having a dabble with.
But I think that's the thing with the wives and the mine. You've got that kind of. I think the genuinely creepiest horror is the one where suggestions left.
Goes up then.
Well, we've lost her. While we wait, first I'll reload, and while we wait. While we wait for Samantha to come back, if you look up her book, the short story series is called Crimes of Passion. Stranger in Her Bed is also out and got made into a film.
Here we go. I'm back. Hi, yes. I don't know what happened then. How strange.
No, you just disappeared on me.
Yeah, that's so weird. That was so weird. Anyway, I'm back. So where were we?
We were talking about the fact that you sort of leave things as a power of suggestion. I think like that Shirley Jackson-esque kind of horror, which is genuinely the creepiest thing I've ever written, is anything by Shirley Jackson.
Oh, that's a massive compliment. Thank you. That's a massive compliment, because yeah, she's absolutely brilliant. I do like that. I do like to. I can do graphic, but I often think psychological scarier, and that it's what you don't see that can be worse. The implied.
You can imagine, isn't it? That is always
it's going to be worse than what somebody's going to write down. Whatever's, because that fear that's in your head will get blown up in a different direction than anybody else. Like everybody will react to it in a different way. And yeah, I love doing that. I love doing
a lot of tension as well.
Yeah, I like to do that too. I mean, I think to me it's like with writing, I'm one of those people. I write what I want to read. So I can read lots and lots of literary fiction that may have pages and pages of description, personally, I like to read short description. I don't want to walk in a room in the middle of action and find and the writer's describing every picture on the wall and every bit of furniture, and you've come away from the action. I like my stuff to sort of read like a screenplay. It's all fast, it's all happening, it's all immediate, because I like to read like that, if that makes sense. And again, I see it all very filmically. So when I'm writing a story or a novel, it's like the images are in my head. It's like I'm watching it in my mind as a film, and then I translate it into words as well. That's strangely how I work. So I think that's why a lot of my things are very filmic in that sense as well, that they, you know, and they're quick. You see it all. I'll never say something in 3 paragraphs if I can say it in a line, for example. I would rather write tighter than that. You know, it's something I do because I find it frustrating reading lots and lots of pages of stuff that's taken me away from what I was really interested in, you know, that action that was just happening, and you've just now gone somewhere else, you know. So it was a frustration for me with Stephen King that later on back in the day. And Anne Rice, love her stuff, but to me, it's a different kind of reading that. And what I'm trying to do, I want it to be pacier.
Can take quite a lot of work.
Yeah. She can. I love them. I love her book, and I'm happy to go along with it. But I think for me, I think the modern reader likes, we're so used to fast-paced things like montage on TV. We get told a story in a matter of seconds on TV with montage. I think the modern reader likes that now. You know, they want a fast fix. They want to get into a character quickly. They want to know a story very quickly. They don't want to be, oh, we're walking through a forest and it's raining and right. I mean, that's got its place as well. But I like to write where I get everybody straight away, you know, and then hopefully you'll come along with me. It's deliberate, but it's also because I want to read that myself. If that makes any sense.
No, it really does. I think I veer between two. I love a really slow book where nothing much happens.
Yeah, I do too.
But like I don't mind a pacey one as well.
I think it depends on the story, doesn't it? It's like Memoirs of a Geisha, long book. Oh, so compelling though, and it was languorous in places, but it was beautiful. And there are certain books that you read that are just so beautifully written that you don't mind that going along with it slower. A lot of literary fiction is like that, and I do love literary fiction. But I think, again, like I say, for my thrillers or for horror, I think it has to be pacier. It has to grip right away. And you have to have strong characters that are believable right from the start as well. And they don't always have to be nice characters or likable, I always think as well. I don't think you have to always, you know, because not everybody's likable, are they? You know, you might have different sides, and, you know, people are interesting that way, I think.
You've got a minute left of our chat.
Yeah, well, I've never stopped talking.
No, we could talk to you for hours. Genuinely, this could go on all night. But people have things to go and do.
Yeah.
Reminders of your books. So what people are going to go away and buy.
So my latest collection, Crimes of Passion, it's available from Telos, or so if you go www.telos, that's spelled telos.co.uk. And I've got Stranger in Our Bed, which is also a movie. You can see it on Prime, you can see it on iTunes, Rakuten, and many more places. And you've also got the House of Killers trilogy, which I still think is probably my best to date. I am very proud of that trilogy. Love you to read it, love to hear your thoughts on it. And that is a spy espionage thriller. So thriller series, which had a great deal of fun writing as well. And I've got a new book coming out next year, but I can't tell you anything more about that because I only signed the contract yesterday. Hopefully there'll be a bookseller, a book brunch announcements, whatever soon, when I'll be able to share it. But it is the thriller, but it's a supernatural thriller, so I can tell you that much. So crossing the genres again, so that'll be good fun. And again, another book that I'm incredibly proud of. So hopefully, yeah, if you want to know more about me, samanthaleehowe.co.uk. And yeah, thank you so much for being here and listening, everybody.
And I think this is Donna, a nice way to end, who's saying she's off to get the short stories on my recommendation.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Donna. I really hope you enjoy it. Oh, let me know. Ping me. Let me know.
And then all that's left to say is thanks so much for being on.
Oh, thank you, Kaz. As always, delight talking to you. And thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
No problem. You're welcome anytime.
Oh, thanks.